Ate wa ka tanka e o e ro he. Ate wa ka tanka e ro he. Ate wa ka tanka o shimaya yo. Oyate, oyate, zani ji pelo. Heya ho ye wa ye lo he. Ate wa ka tanka we lo he. Ate wa ka tanka we lo he. Ate wa ka tanka oshimaya yo. Oyate, oyate, zani ji pelo. Heya ho ye wa ye lo he. Ate wa ka tanka oshimaya yo. Oyate, oyate, zani ji pelo. Heya ho ye wa ye lo he. Aho, Creator. It's your grandson, your son, your brother Brett Bearhawk. Aho. Ate wanka tanka takashila ina maka. Be with us now. Please help me say a beautiful prayer for all of our lives, Creator. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Palami Elohe. We take the time to acknowledge the directions from the west to the north, to the east, to the south, from up above, to Ate wanka tanka, to down below Mother Earth, Inamaka. And right there in our heart center, so where we always know where home is. Take time to acknowledge our ancestors, the ones that walked that red road before us. Thank you for your lives. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for everything that led to this moment. We are grateful. Be with us now. Help us now. We need you now. Prayers for all the children. Prayers of reconnection to Mother Earth. Prayers that we love Mother Earth. That we nourish her as much as she nourishes us. Prayer that we respect our mothers. Our indigenous, the one most connected to these ways. Regenerative farming is indigenous food system, so God bless that. Allow us to let go of our egos. Allow us to live with a soul purpose and a soul mission and a soul vision. Allow us to get out of our own way. Bless those that have the opportunity to come up here tonight and share. Please allow them to be channels of you, Creator. Allow them to get out of their way so that we can receive what is needed for humanity right now in a big, big, big way, because it's needed. So thank you. Thank you for all of it. We are grateful. We pray these things with all of our love, all of our blessings, for all our relations. Aho, matakwiyas.
First here I have Maria Elena Mia Lopez. She is a Chumash elder from these lands. She did an incredible opening ceremony for us here to bring in the ancestors and the land itself, to invite the land to be at the center of our night tonight. She's a community leader, a university professor, and a wisdom keeper. So we're really grateful to have her here with us and holding space through the times and the dimensions. So thank you for being here. And then next to her is Oliver English. He's a filmmaker, chef, and food advocate, CEO and co-founder of Common Table Creative, and has an award-winning documentary, Feeding Tomorrow, which I'm sure many of you here have seen, and if not, definitely check it out. Has opened venues across multiple continents and is passionate about addressing the impacts of globalization and climate change on food systems through storytelling and visual media. So very resonant with the work we do, both at Project Biome and Farmers Footprint. Thank you for being with us, Oliver. And I think most people here know Zach, Dr. Zach Bush, who is the founder of both of our organizations, a doctor, a thought leader, an incredible human, a dear friend of mine, constantly surprising me with the way he thinks and the way he shares and how he shows up in the world, and helping us to think differently about some of these really big issues that we all care about. So thank you for being with us, Zach. Connecting with our innate indigeneity. So how can we as humans connect with our innate indigeneity? You know, the word indigeneity has become kind of, in many ways, overused or used improperly. And so what does it mean to connect with our innate indigeneity?
Aku. Mia kakti kia papanesh moloki chumashti hi siuxtun ke eswahil hi nahlamu limu kastro kapkumuli hi kia panesh shalawa. Hello everyone, my name is Mia Lopez, and my ancestral Shomesh villages are Siuxtun and Swahil on our island of Limu. Siuxtun is on the coast of Santa Barbara between the Santa Barbara Pier and Santa Barbara City College. And Swahil is on our island of Limu, which you would recognize as Scorpion Bay on Santa Cruz Island. One of the closest villages probably the biggest village near here is Shalawa. So Kastyo Kapkumuli hi Shalawa. Welcome. I'm glad you're here at Shalawa. What I like to share with people, and I had somebody say, "Oh, Mia, you just want us all to go home." I don't want you to go home because we are now all home together. But I do want you to know where your ancestral home was. I want you to know why your people thrived there, why they loved it, what was in that land that brought those people health and family and community. Because if you know where you came from, then when you come here to my land, your heart, your spirit is going to recognize those things around you that remind your spirit of where it came from. And if you can love those little things here that reconnect you to your home, then you're closer, a little bit closer to then loving this land here as I love it. And so I don't want you to go home because we share this land together now. We raise our children together here now. We bury our ancestors who have passed here together now in this soil. A lot of people say we are all indigenous to somewhere. We are. And if you know about that place, that's how you reconnect. So if you know deeper about who you are, who your parents are, your grandparents, and so forth, know your lineage, know where you came from. It's the same as knowing history. We know history. Why? Not because we can change it, but because if we don't know it, we can't move forward in a better way. And so if you know your history, if you know your people, if you know your lineage, then collectively us together here in this space today can move forward together in a good way.
Mahalo. Yeah, I think often about how the technologies of capitalism and colonialism make us ancestral orphans in many ways. And I myself was a settler colonial history in Hawaii, and realized that I didn't have access to a lot of my ancestry. And so in many ways, we've been cut off from those roots. So thank you for that profound invitation. Appreciate you. Oliver, I want to ask you about how does food serve as a direct link between human and planetary health with the work that you've done, and where do you see that linkage happening?
Food is our most intimate connection with the natural world. It is the only thing on a daily basis that we ingest from the natural world that becomes us. The toxins, the health benefits. It is the only thing that all of us put into our bodies multiple times a day, hopefully, that becomes us. And in that, it is an immensely personal, an immensely intimate, an immensely powerful relationship. We have been to, through our documentary, which we feature Zach in, it's nice to see him again actually after all these years. In our documentary and through our production business, we have visited now 70 farms all around the world. Different continents, different backgrounds, different farmers, different people. And what I've come to see and appreciate and experience firsthand is the deep, fundamental connection between human health and planetary health. And that connection resides in the quality and the nutrient density of our food, and that resides in the quality and the nutrient density of our soil. When we choose foods, ideally at the farmer's market or at the grocery store, that are packed full of nutrients, that are rich in colors, that have a high pigmentation. You know, we say that the deeper, the darker the pigmentation of a fruit or vegetable, the more nutrients it has, and it usually means that it came from healthy soils. The sooner that it's harvested, the more nutrients it has. As soon as you cut a fruit or vegetable, it starts to die. So if you have something in the grocery store that's been there for a couple weeks, it might have some nutrients, but not as many as it could have. Versus if you have something that you grew yourself and harvested that day, or you got from the farmer's market a day or two ago, that is going to have the most nutrient-dense possible food. That is the food that is the most healing for us on a human cellular level. And the beautiful connection between that food and environmental stewardship is the food that comes from these farms, the farms that are taking care of their soil through rotating crops, integrating animal, not using chemicals, pesticides, and fertilizers. Those are the foods that are also healing the planet. Those are the farms that are also regenerating our soil, building biodiversity, and stewarding our planet. So when we choose the nutrient-dense, delicious, flavorful, I may add, and I'm a chef, I love to cook, when we choose the flavorful, deeply pigmented food, that is the healthiest for us, and it also means that it came from the most sustainable farms. So there is a deep fundamental connection between the food that heals our bodies and the food that is going to heal our planet. And it starts in the soil and it revolves around regenerative agriculture. And that is the foundation of where we need to move things into the future. And I will say one more thing. There has never been a more exciting time to be part of the food movement because we've never known so much about the challenges we face, while at the same time, we have never had such a clear picture of how to move forward. And each and every one of you has the opportunity to support regenerative food systems and regenerative agriculture through your food dollars, through what you buy at the farmer's market and the grocery store. Tonight, well maybe tomorrow, but starting tomorrow, we are all active agents of change and we all have a massive and important role to play in this movement. And it is a delicious movement.
Amazing. I love it. You know, as a futurist, I've studied collapse for a long time, which one would think would be depressing, but actually the beautiful thing about collapse is it's what's required for new beginnings to be born. And Zach speaks a lot about rebirth and that sort of thing. And what you're speaking to too is something I think about a lot is that, the invitation of this moment and the multiple polycrisis systems collapse that we're dealing with is that actually it's inviting us into a very beautiful future. Somewhere where we understand where our food comes from, we eat healthy, nutritious food, we connect with other people, we spend time in nature, we slow down, we use less, we consume less. So just inviting us to think about that, as we sit together in these conversations. And what you were sharing, Oliver, actually I want to ask Mia one more question before I go to you, Zach. I'm curious about the ancestral food landscape of this place and what it was like and what was being produced and how it was done. In Hawaii, we had the Aupua'a system that was very sustainable for many years based on watershed management. I'm curious about this place. What was happening?
Here, I can only talk about here, Santa Barbara, my area, because culture is very connected to land. When the colonists came here, one of the things that was documented often was the richness of the land and the abundance of the plants and how lush everything was. And the reason for that is because we allowed our plants to live with each other. a lot of people recognize when you mentioned the three sisters, squash, beans, and corn, because they grow together, because the corn sprouts up and supports the vines that hold the beans, and the squash lives underneath. Scientifically, each one of those plants nourishes the ground so that the other one has nourishment. Our landscape here was abundant and rich because we allowed those plants to stay together, to live together, and we harvested them together, and we replanted them together, always. And so when colonization came and created monocropping, it damaged everything. Here in this landscape, even in this place, native plants have been pushed out. They're not so beautiful. They're not as beautiful as the invasive or plants from other places that have beautiful flowers and rich green leaves. No, our plants are have kind of spindly leaves, and they're always kind of a deeper, darker, ashy, sage color. But their roots are super deep, super deep. And even when they're on the top, even when they look like they're dead, their roots are so full of nutrients and medicine. And so one of the things that we've been trying to do is come back to having access to places. I have to say, shout out to Jeff, if you're here still, Alexandra, and the Dos Pueblos Institute, because they are truly giving back and allowing us to have access. My grandbaby got to spread the first handful of seeds out there with Bella and Lily. Thank you so much. And by having access, we can then come back to our foods, these foods that are going to nourish us, but also help us be healthy. And a lot of people think that we are nomadic, that we moved a lot, but here in Santa Barbara, here in our space, there's no reason to move because we have the mountains. And guess what? If our animals migrate, it's okay, let them, because we have the ocean, we have our trees, we have so much food around us. And one of the things that I cry about often is how our homeless people die, and they're so hungry when I see them in their places, and I see they don't even know that they're surrounded by food right now. But because our areas use pesticides and all of that, even if they knew, they couldn't use it because they're being polluted. So this was a really rich place of food. And our people were very healthy. And I want to be healthier. And that's one of the things that I'm, really, really encouraging our young people to get back into is taking care of the land through our plant foods, through our plants. But that starts with having access. Santa Barbara is a beautiful place. Everybody wants their private beaches, everyone wants their private mountain homes, and everybody needs, 15 acres for 2 people. Yeah. And so it's hard, but we can do it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for that. I really wanted to know this place. I really appreciate that. And it's actually perfect segue to the question for Zach, which is around balance. And this idea of a homeless person dying with food all around them, and the pesticides that are being used that are poisoning our waters and our air and our food and our bodies, and this highly imbalanced moment that we found ourselves in, where we're in such a real experience of chaos on all levels, from like the cellular level to the societal level to the climate level. It's all just chaos. And yet in that uncertainty, there is the promise of a restoration of balance. And so my question for you, Zach, is what will it take to get us there, to restore that balance?
fortunately has absolutely nothing to do with humans in some ways. So I think if we take a look across, the cosmos, it's obvious that the cosmos has found a mechanism of balance. We live in a universe that actually practices something called syntropy all the time. Syntropy is a description of order out of chaos. Chaos in physics is described as entropy. The opposite is syntropy. And so we live in a syntropic universe in which space-time, full of an enormous amount of electromagnetic field energy, gave birth to planets that came forth from suns, that came forth from black holes. And so there's this process of constant birthing of more and more complex structures all the way through. And then we end up on a planet Earth, and this Earth iterates for 4 billion years, birthing itself, rebirthing itself, extinctions, regenerations, extinctions, rebirths, this pressure going and pushing and pushing and pushing, and now we come to this little tiny moment, this little split second in the cosmos, and humans come along and say, oh my God, we're screwing everything up. This is a complete disaster. Everything's probably going to be dead, and then we're gone, and then universe is done because it failed, because we're gone. And so we have this anthropocentric, human-centric view of the problem, and therefore a human-centric view of the solution, which means that we will probably march ourselves into extinction, thinking that we are the ones that both caused the problem and therefore have to come up with the solution. But then you back up and you wonder if the cosmos would really wait for a human who can't even handle itself at 13 years old to solve the problems of the universe. Like, it just seems super unlikely that this was the design, right? And so I just take great joy in the fact that what is going to bring us into balance is the moment that we just give witness to beauty. And there is a massive movement afoot on this planet to bring us into balance right now. Every 20,000 years, this planet rebirths something called North Africa. North Africa is literally the lung systems of the planet. We hear a lot about the Amazon jungle being the lungs. It's actually the kidneys. It's the thing that does the water movement from the rivers up into the air. And so the kidney system is the rainforest of the world. So it's Central Africa with the Congo. It's the rainforest. The lungs of the planet are North Africa, that then regenerates about a third of the surface of the planet every 20,000 years. And so when Africa begins to breathe, this Earth changes. And every time she does so, there's an explosion of genetic complexity and beauty that comes out of Africa and then extends throughout the world. But there's a birth canal that runs the 31st longitude from the east coast of South Africa up through the Ethiopian Rift Valley, up through Cairo, Egypt, Turkey, Eastern Europe, all the way up into Scandinavia. Every genetic innovation on the planet has come out of that birth canal. And so bizarrely, this planet literally has a womb, which is actually the Ethiopian Ocean, which extends south from the African continent down to the Antarctica. And so that triangle ocean, basically the shape of Africa reflected downwards, is the womb. The birth canal hits at Plettenberg, South Africa, and there's literally a pyramid, 3 pyramids that have come out of the beach there. And then the third pyramid, it's often called the Magdalene's Cathedral. That third pyramid has a perfect vaginal canal that's been carved through it by the ocean, and it is lined with mussels. And so every wave that rolls through there right now, you can hear the mussels clatter. And so you've got this genetic material coming out of the womb of the Ethiopian Ocean up this birth canal and launching up onto the African continent. And so that's where we see the first bacteria 3.5 billion years ago. It's the first fungi another billion years later. It's the first human societies. All the way through time, this is the birth canal, beginning there. That little area today holds 2/3 of the genetics of the entire planet are still persistent right there in that space. And so the birth canal has been this huge diaspora of energy onto the planet. And so this is what's going to bring us into balance as a mother is going to be giving birth again. And the death that is happening on the planet right now, whether it be human death or ecosystems death, is the energetic process of chaos or entropy that is giving forth the energy for the next syntropy moment. And so entropy, syntropy, entropy, syntropy, this is the history of the cosmos, this is the history of the planet. And so how do we know that it's going to rebirth right now? There's some obvious things, is that, well, it's been about 20,000 years since it rebirthed. That's a pattern that it likes. But more importantly, the elephants are marching, or at least are ready to march, if we will bring ourselves into harmony. 300,000 elephants have overpopulated Botswana and northern South Africa over just the last 10 years. Elephants do not overpopulate their food system because they have no predator, so they always balance their reproduction with their food. That law of nature broke 10 years ago, and they started having babies, and they kept doing it. And so they've wiped out the entire forest of Botswana, overgrowing their food population. And it's become a massive ecologic crisis because they cannot move out of Botswana because of the fences. Every fence functions as a macro antibiotic. And so the antibiotics of our herbicides and pesticides are wiping out the microbiome. The fences are wiping out the macrobiome of this planet. And so a bunch of Americans and Westerners have gone down and purchased much of Africa, much of South America. We push the indigenous peoples and species off it and say, we're going to save the rhino. And so this is now rhino territory. And we're going to build a massive fence that's 15 feet high, electrified, and we have helicopters that go around making sure no indigenous cultures are allowed to eat any of this food, and we're going to just protect the rhino. So that myopic single species belief of conservation has fenced a continent that is the birth canal of the planet, and she cannot rebirth right now. And so it is time for us to release the elephants and let them walk, because when they do, they recarbonize soils by re-engineering the river systems. There's 5 river systems, and so Project Biome has begun that journey of following the elephants. And so we're on the first river system down in South Africa with a center of excellence in rewilding. Rewilding rivers and coastlines is our first path, and then regenerative agriculture corridors alongside of that. So we have a center of excellence in regeneration coming alongside of that. And the last piece is really bringing humans back into touch with our indigenous reality, which is we are of Earth. And so everything needs to map back to a value system of Earth. We cannot have any more economies that are driven by fiscal policy of some distant country. Fiscal policy is a broken science of belief of scarcity. Every currency for the last 10,000 years has been built on the philosophy of scarcity. That's why it has value. There's not much of it, so you have to compete for it. Nature has never used a scarcity model for the way in which she moves, and so it's time for us to start mapping our macroeconomies back to our microbiology. And so the third piece of Project Biome is reconnected economies in which the value systems of the local culture are based in the literal frequencies and energies of their soil, water, and air systems. And so with this, we can start to follow the patterns in which the biology will restore the planet. And when North Africa begins to breathe again, when the elephants walk those plains and they recarbonize North Africa, the Middle East follows. Imagine Saudi Arabia green, the largest grasslands and savannas in the world, North Africa, Saudi Arabia, Siberia, North China. That's a third of the surface of the planet goes green again, and it's all in the northern hemisphere, and she will take another breath at that moment. All of the CO2 in the atmosphere, the chemistry problem that we have, is actually the breath hold of a planet waiting for her lungs to be released. And when we stop the fences, or break down the fences, and we stop the spraying of the antibiotics, we will release a breath on this planet, and we will go back into balance.
Woo! May the elephants walk. Thank you, Zach. Every time I hear that, I love it so much. I can just see them. I can see them getting ready and let them walk. So I have other questions, but I'd love to open up to all of you. Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask of our incredible speakers tonight? You can either, yep. Can you speak loudly? Or?
Yeah, sure. I'm Barbara, and I live here. And I'm fascinated by everything you said, Zach. And my question is, or my point is, it sounds profound. How many people know about it and what to do about it? Literally, like, I know we're here, it's a fundraiser.
Yeah, we have 200 people here tonight, so I think it's about 200 people know so far. So the question was, who knows? How do we get the word out?
How do we get the word out, especially at this moment in time?
Yeah. So the question is, it sounds profound, sounds hopeful. Why the heck isn't everybody hopeful? So how do we get this message out there? And the answer is, this is the momentum moment for not just Project Biome, but many, many indigenous groups are raising their voice now. And so what you just heard from me is the wisdom of wisdom keepers across the world. So this is what the Kogi are saying in Colombia. It is what the Arhuaco are saying. It's what the the Khoisan people of Africa are saying, and have said forever, is that this moment would come. And so, fortunately, this is ancient wisdom that's coming to bear. And so, the question of how do we do it now, we're at a tipping point in which humanity is about to look inward. And so, Project Biome is ready to tell a story at a much bigger level. And we're ready to look inward for the responsibility of transforming this world. You saw the last flash of the great white hope of Kennedy coming into office to make America healthy again. And I watched the whole trajectory, and I love Bobby, and I feel for him because he's under karmic pressures and family pressures and country pressures and all of this. But it is a tired story that some new person is going to come along to make something healthy again. Let's hope this was the last time we're going to fall for that story. There is nobody who's going to come along and save this thing. There is a radical revolution within each of us that has to take place, and tonight is an invitation to join in this together. It is such an important transition point where it is going to happen from within, and it's going to happen here. And so lean in hard, because we are about to have governments listening to Project Biome. And so I'll be in Abu Dhabi in Saudi Arabia in January and February, and I've been working in India the last few months with the momentum that this teams are building in Africa, the U.S., and other continents right now. We're across 5 continents, and this team is tiny, y'all, because we have been making mountains out of the amounts of money we've made. We have just, through the genius of these women, we are literally changing the mindset of humans. And I just want to lift Alana up because, first of all, she and Belle made this thing happen tonight, so thank you for that. But this is a woman that started to dream the future of Farmer's Footprint. She joined us 4 years back or something like that as one of our magnificent operators, and she started to have dreams of where this organization was going to go to create exactly what was just asked, is how do we create the radical change? And here I was a doctor back in the day telling people about glyphosate. And to this day, every week, including this week, laboratory that I run in Virginia is discovering some crazy, terrible stuff about glyphosate. And so every week we dig deeper and deeper into that chemical, and we find more and more science. And that science does not change anybody or anything. We have testified in front of the EPA year after year after year to absolutely no end. And so the science is not shifting anything because nobody lives science. Science is an observation of life, but it is not a pathway of living. And so this is where somebody like Alana comes in and says the future of this organization, if we're really going to change everything, is going to be the culture of food. And she saw Nana coming, and Nana is our description of this culture of food that is going to be birthed, because like was pointed out by Oliver here, is we have got a situation in which every single one of you are intimately, sensually, albeit almost sexually involved with this planet every day, because the intimacy level that is infecting you in your bloodstream right now is every bit as sexual and sensual as what we think of human fertility. There is a genetic exchange going on in your bloodstream right now. You guys, first of all, holy smokes, the food. What the heck? That was awesome. Awesome. So chefs, everybody involved, and thank you for underlighting these trees. These are our ancestors, right? And so these trees are lit for us tonight. So thank you. I think it's Emma Rose who was doing the work on lighting that up. So well done on Emma Rose. And so thank you for giving us a nighttime look at our ancestors that stand and hope that we are ready to receive. So I need to shut the heck up because we had some great questions and everything else, but I get so freaking excited about this thing. And Alana, thank you for Nana, because it is going to be the culture of food that makes the regenerative story become relevant and palpable in every single home in this world. And we're going to start to eat the future that we want to live in.
Amazing. What advice would you give to someone trying to start out and make change on the ground level in communities?
It's a great question. I think one thing that I learned from making this film, again, which we feature Zach in, is we feature innovators in every aspect of life who are in some way connected to food. Whether it's an educator creating healthy foods in a food desert, a regenerative farmer changing the way that the Midwest is looking at agriculture, or the woman who built the first working farm on a hospital campus in the United States and is treating patients with whole food plants, including curing her dad's cancer diagnosis. And what I learned from all these people who don't come from a particular, huge amount of means, don't have a tremendous amount of resources. These folks saw that something was broken in their community, and with whatever resources they had and whatever team they could gather, they went ahead and made the change. And it was not necessarily some sweeping vision to begin, but it was this small step in a different direction. And that small step, in my experience, called in other souls and other people to support that movement. So my invitation to you here tonight is, if there is something wrong in your community, in your little small part of the world, take a step. Whatever the smallest step you can make is to feed somebody, to grow a garden, to grow healthy food, to change the way someone in your community sees food, to begin a composting program. Take a small step and believe that the movement is behind you and that other people will come to support you. So no step is small enough. And whatever that is, whatever your moment is, and the beautiful thing about the food movement, I may add, is that it is one area of life that is deeply and fundamentally interconnected to all aspects of our lives. Whether it's human health, environmental health, food access, societal health, connection to nature, it is deeply and fundamentally connected to every single part of our past, our present, and our future. And so whatever change you can conjure up, start. Start somewhere. The movement is big, but it has a lot of room to grow. So I welcome and invite all of you to start. And whether that's, again, starting a small garden in your front yard, buying a regenerative and organic ingredient at the farmer's market or the grocery store, or asking your local restaurant if they compost. All of these steps matter. All of these steps contribute to this movement, and they signal to businesses, to consumers, to your neighbors that this is the way of the future. So no small step is small enough. Make the change, make a shift, and believe that you are part of this new world that we are going to create.
I just want to call attention to our space tonight. We have some really great men here. We have some men with some really good hearts here. But if you notice, we have mostly women. There's a reason for that. The reason for that is that nature, the world, Hutash, Mother Earth, is calling her women to come back into leadership, come back into raising the family, come back into bringing life forth. And the way that our societies have been in the past and recent past have been male-dominated, but not for a good reason. And so our women have to come back. So if you notice, there's a lot of organizations and things happening that are creating community that are women-led, because we birth life. We care for children. We bring people together. We feed people. And so it's in our nature. It's in our every cell of our body. It's in every aspect of our breath to bring people along with us. Really funny anecdote real quick. I watched this thing and a guy said, he said, men die, have a shorter lifespan than women. He said, I think that creator's trying to tell us something, that women are more important. And I laughed, but really, when he started talking about it a little bit more, who gives knowledge, right? So who nurtures our babies, but our grandmothers, our nenas do that. And yes, our grandfathers and our men are super important, and I'm not trying to minimize them, but we as women have been told that we are less than for so long that we need to stop and remember that, no, we are the life givers. When we're in the womb, the heart is born first. The heart is created first. And below the heart, The next cells to form are the brain, but they're below the heart. As we stand here today, our brain is above the heart, and we have to go back to remembering what is most important. And when we're being birthed, if it wasn't so important, it wouldn't be the first thing, but our heart is more important. As women, we come out of our mother, but when we birth our children, when we birth our women, they are formed within our body with everything that they will need for life, including every single egg that they will have in their lifetime, which means as women, we carry our grandbabies before our daughters carry their babies. That's our responsibility. We have a responsibility to those grandbabies that we've already carried. And that includes our boys, because we hold all of them too. And so I just want to remind us to take a look around and remember that our women are strength. Our women are the balance. Our men have had to fight for way too long. Our men have had to use ego for way too long. And we need to come in with our heart and tell them it's okay to be soft. You don't have to fight, because we're standing next to you to balance that out. And so I just want to, give a call to action to our women out there, and to our men who are so wonderful. Thank you for holding us, right? I have a really amazing husband who says, "Go do that, babe. Go do that." He said to our neighbor, "Don't worry about me getting mad at you. You should worry about my wife being mad at you." But thank you for allowing me to have my own power. Thank you for holding me to understand and hold that. And so, but remember, we have a job and we have to get back to it.
Amazing. To the women. Yeah.
What is the internal change? We talked about the external, maybe the Maha thing is external, and it's now.
Very good. The question is around internal change versus external change. So if we're not going to see Donald Trump make us healthy again with the help of Bobby Kane and the rest, then how does health happen? We're at a very interesting tipping point in human history. And so for the first time in 300,000 years of our Homo sapiens sapien gene pool, we have accumulated enough trauma that we cannot procreate. And so this is the first time that we've brought our own genetics to a point of extinction. And so this has been a tumbling process of two kind of parallel things that have evolved. The first is the emergence of this abandonment disorder of humanity. And so somewhere around 5,000 to 10,000 years ago, the entire planet of humanity went through an amnesia moment where we forgot we were from Earth. And I've traveled all over the world trying to figure out how this happened or what people's theories, and there's literally none. Like, it is a deep, deep amnesia. The Khoisan people have a 100,000-year oral tradition. They remember back, but they cannot remember 5,000 to 7,000 years ago. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia, 40,000 oral year history, cannot remember. And so there's something that happened to us that led to this extreme moment of abandonment where we believed we were kicked out of nature, and our religions tell the stories, the rest. At that moment, we started the journey into this genetic degradation. And so as we started to believe ourselves separate from nature or kicked out of nature, we stopped the behaviors that had freed our genetics up generation to generation. And those behaviors can still be practiced in a lot of indigenous cultures around the world. And I'm really excited to see them re-emerging right now. There's a huge resurgence of these practices. But we've got a lot of fire around us right now, which is lovely because it's freaking cold out here. But the fire anywhere else in the culture at this time of night would be the center of dancing and chanting and not scientific rigor or whatever we're doing up here. It would be just dancing and singing. Like, you light the fire and you move, you dance, you chant, you do the thing. We forgot how to do that, frankly. And so this has led to an accumulation of trauma because we're not clearing it. And so these practices of spiritual song, spiritual chant, dance, movement frankly, cuddle puddles. When you go to an indigenous culture, the kids are all over the elders, and the elders are all over their kids, and everybody's all over each other. And there's this. So get closer, you guys. You know, like there's get more indigenous or something here. Like we've got to tighten it up. And so we got to get into each other's space. We got to swap microbiome. We got to get into this thing so that there's actually something exchanging. Because if you don't and you stay isolated, then you go into chaos. It's the second law of thermodynamics. Any system left in isolation increases its entropy. And so from this abandonment, we started to go into entropy. And so now we get to witness scientifically, amazingly that we develop the technologies at the same time that we come to this moment, that we can actually witness the crisis. And so we now know genetically that there is so much epigenetic trauma stored over the last 5 generations from chemical trauma that have been layered on a peoples that no longer know how to clear their own trauma. And so we accumulate it generation to generation, and it stacks. And so that stacking function now brings us to 1 in 3 males on the planet with infertility now, from just sperm count alone. 1 in 4 women have polycystic ovarian syndrome in this country, and that's just one cause of the 15 common causes of infertility in women. And so we have this unbelievable collapse of fertility because of the stored trauma. There is no lawmaker that's going to come along and correct that, because the nuclear bomb went off in our genetics 4 generations back, and it stacks. For 4 generations after a chemical trauma, it gets worse and worse and worse, the consequences, even if the chemical is removed. And so even if today we outlawed all of the chemical agriculture and everything else, it is still going to take us to our knees and to this moment of extinction. So what does this mean? It means that for the first time in human history, we can no longer look outside of ourselves for any kind of input that can fix it. And we've got to go so deep inside right now to not become genetic memories of our trauma, but to become energetic expressions of our future. And so we have to shift from genetics to energetics. And to do that, we got to get really quiet, and then we got to get really loud. And then we got to get really quiet, and then we got to get really loud. And so we got to switch back and forth here, where we listen into nature, and then we scream the beauty we see. Because it is beautiful in there, and you are beautiful, and you are a miraculous being that came here right now, and you have been so sub-programmed into your declined and degenerated and weakened state right now, so freaking wake up to your own beauty, because you are a powerhouse that came here, and you burn bright. You are 10,000 times brighter than a sun, because you're alive. That's how much energy it takes to get one single human cell to survive or to thrive, is 10,000 times more energy per cubic centimeter than the surface of the sun. You are a bright being. You are light incarnate, and that's what life is a concentration of light energy. And so step up, let your light shine, change the world within you, repattern the original math, the original design, become energetic, and then express your genetics. We need to stop spiritual escapism, and we need to create the reality from that spirituality. And so this is our new download, is changing the polarity. For too long, the polarity has been this outward expression. We need to take all of that energy of the cosmos and go inward with it and really transmute this genetic trauma that we carry within us and begin again.
Yoo-hoo. Thank you, Zach. Amazing. You know, we're actually going to go into a somatic experience in just a moment, but I want to offer one more closing comment from each of our speakers. So, you know, we've been looking tonight at the past, the present, and the futures, and I know each of you work tirelessly, really, for more beloved futures in different ways. So what is something that you see as like a glimmer, a sparkle that you've experienced recently that's given you this feeling of hopefulness that you might want to share with this audience? That could either be a call to action or just something to pay attention to, or an allyship, or something that people who have come here who all wish to be part of this movement could explore. And Zach, we'll start with you and go to Oliver and then end with Mia.
I guess I'll just give you the last 8 weeks of North Africa as a glimmer of hope. There's tens of thousands of lakes that just appeared in North Africa that have been just sand for the last couple thousand years. And so the largest of these in the sand dunes of Morocco, a 75-mile lake formed almost overnight. And so there is a shift happening on this planet right now in which the water cycle is going to reclaim the deserts and turn them green again. And so this is happening as we talk. And interestingly, the headlines that are announcing the emergence of these lakes are all doom and gloom. Bad news, there's so much rain in North Africa that it suggests that things are collapsing and everything is in demise, and it must be global warming. There must be too much CO2 in the atmosphere because there's lakes in North Africa. We have got to stop telling Mother Earth that she doesn't know what she's doing. And it's time for us to accept that she's on a process of rebirth and we need to get in line.
On that point, I would say that a couple years ago, because of the findings of the film, we convinced a local principal of the merits of starting a school farm in Santa Monica. And we ended up building one of the biggest regenerative school farms at a public middle school in the city of Los Angeles. And we hired a farmer. And every single child who goes to that school spends time out on the farm every single week, learning about composting, where food comes from, how to grow food, biodiversity, carbon sequestration. And we have parents who come to us on a weekly basis during volunteer days, and they say, "Thank you. My child never used to eat kale. Could not get them to eat green beans at Thanksgiving. Now I cannot get them to stop. And by the way, here's the compost from our house because my third grader learned about it in school and they came back to the house to teach us." And so, I can clap about that. That's a worthwhile clap. So the point of that story is that we have the solutions already. This is not rocket science, my friends. This is a realignment. So I invite us to envision a world where every school in every part of the country and every part of the world has a school farm and a school garden. All of the working landscapes of our entire Earth are transformed into regenerative, earth-giving, life-blossoming ecosystems. Our hospitals have farms and gardens attached to them. Our parkways are ecosystem corridors and habitats for wildlife. Every single part of our Earth is turned in to a new paradigm where we are in relationship with that earth. And this is not some faraway distant future that we don't know how to create. This is, as we've talked about, this is going back to ancient and indigenous wisdom and tried and true practices and principles that have existed for generations and that are actually going to be the ones to move us forward. So let us go build that earth together because we know how to do it. And to quote one of the farmers in our film, I said, "Mark, what does feeding tomorrow mean to you?" And he said, "Feeding tomorrow is the people who grow food and the people who eat food working together to transform the entire ecology of our planet. And in doing so, transforming our own lives, our own health, our relationships with ourselves and our communities." So that is beautiful and that is deeply empowering because every single one of us has the opportunity to take part in this movement starting tomorrow with the food that you eat, the farmers that you support, the gardens that you build, the composting that you do in your backyard, how we treat our farms and our food. And that is immensely powerful in a world of doom and gloom. But the world is significantly brighter. And Zach's talked about it, we've all talked about it. But it starts with the food that you eat, the farmers you support. And may I might finish with saying, this movement should feel like a great dinner party. So much of the environmental movement for so long has been about, the narrative has been, how do we do less bad? How do we use less lights? How do we drive less cars? How do we do less? This regenerative movement, this moment, is about how do we do more good? Through the food that we eat, the farmers that we support, the great glass of wine that we drink, how do we get our friends and family around the table to eat together, to celebrate the past, the present, and the future? And it all starts with food. So thank you.
Thank you both. And I just have to say that, like, what you're talking about are deeply rooted cultural values. Community and reciprocity. And that's so important because we're not alone. You're not alone. And if you put in your mind that everything I do I'm doing for 10 other people around me to benefit, then we're going to do better. You know, if you just think of yourself, we're never going to do better. And so we have to think as community and for our future, but with positivity. What happens when all we hear from social media, all we hear from the media, all we hear from those who are supposed to be watching out for our better good is negative, negative, negative? What happens with negativity? When something scares you, you stop. You run or you get defensive. You don't do something good. So turn that narrative around to the positivity. We have so many amazing things that are available to us and in front of us and around us in nature, in each other. But yet, that one comment is what we want to hear, is what our brain hangs on to the most, not all the 15 wonderful positive comments. So let's start getting rid of those one at a time and sticking with the positive and saying, you know what? I'm going to throw this can over there. I'm going to bring this bucket into the house to start my compost. Okay, I have a small bucket. Well, guess what? That's fine. Get used to it. Get a bigger bucket next week, next month, whatever. But you're starting, and I'm so proud, right? Let's encourage ourselves to do one step at a time instead of saying, well, if I'm not doing it all 100%, well, what am I doing? I might as well not even do it. No, do the 5%, do the 3%, do the 1%, because it's more than nothing. Mm-hmm. And congratulate yourself. Encourage yourself. I did 1%. Hey, that wasn't too bad. I could do 2%, right? But remember that we're doing it for each other. And be in community with more people. And love each other.
Amazing. Start small. Beginning has power and magic in it, and will make the revolution irresistible. Thank you to our speakers. Let's give them a big round of applause. These 3 incredible humans who hold such potent space for leadership and transformation.
Siaktina, hilakakiwo, akakiwo. Siaktina wash, sisaktina, sakuti. Siaktina wash, sisaktina, sakuti. Siaktina, hilakakiwo, akakiwo. Siaktina wash, sisaktina, sakuti. Siaktina means they're there. Siaktina, hilakakiwo, the stars. Akakiwo, all of the stars. Siaktina wash, they were here before. Sisaktina, they're here right now. Sakuti, and it will continue on forever.
Yeah.